For centuries, the galaxy had been silent, not because there was peace, but because there was fear. Every star system, every world, every race obeyed the High Dominion. Their fleets were unmatched. Their weapons could destroy cities before the people even knew an attack had started. They ruled with iron power, and no one dared to resist. Entire generations grew up believing the Dominion was unstoppable. But in a quiet corner of the galaxy, there was a planet called Earth, and its people had not learned to bow. Captain Elias Vance stood on the bridge of the Sol Invictus, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. Its hull gleamed with dark alloy, armed with weapons designed not for defense, but for war. The Dominion had declared it illegal the moment they learned it existed. But here it was, flying free in the cold dark of space, a challenge that Dominion could not ignore. The crew worked in silence, their faces tense. Outside the wide glass viewport, the stars were calm and distant. But the ship's sensors told a different story. Red icons appeared on the tactical display, one after another, until the screen was almost full. "Contact," said the sensor officer, his voice tight. "Dominion fleet detected. 12 capital ships, 3 carriers, 50+ escorts, all on intercept course." The air on the bridge felt heavy. Even the hum of the ship's systems seemed quieter than usual. Commander Arya Hale stepped forward, her sharp eyes scanning the tactical map. "That's not a patrol, that's a kill force." The COMMS unit crackled to life. A deep, cold voice filled the bridge. "Human vessel, Sol Invictus. This is Admiral Kaelvorth of the High Dominion. You have violated the laws of the galaxy. You will power down your weapons, shut down your engines, and prepare for immediate boarding. Resistance will result in your destruction." The voice carried no doubt, no hesitation, as if the Dominion's victory was already decided. Vance's jaw tightened. His mind flashed with images he could never forget, the burning skies of Terra's colonies, the desperate calls for help that never came, the faces of children staring at the stars, waiting for someone who never arrived. The Dominion had taken too much for too long. He looked at his crew. They were waiting, expecting him to order a retreat, to avoid certain death. But instead, he spoke 3 words that sent a shiver through the bridge. "Arm all weapons." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the crew sprang into action. Warning lights flashed red. The Sol Invictus railgun began to spin up, its magnetic coils glowing white-hot. Energy surged through the ship, preparing for the first shot. Hale gave him a sharp look. "You know what this means. If we fire, there's no going back." Vance didn't look away from the viewport. "There's no going back for any of us. Not anymore." The Dominion fleet moved closer, their formation tight and perfect. They expected the humans to surrender after a show of force. They expected fear. But the Sol Invictus didn't slow. "Target their flagship," Vance ordered. The railgun fired. The shot ripped through space faster than light, a glowing spear of destruction. It struck the flagship's shields with a force that shook the void. The shields flared bright and failed. The second shot punched straight through the ship's central spine. The explosion lit the darkness like a newborn sun. For the first time in centuries, a Dominion flagship, the very symbol of their unbreakable rule, was gone. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then the comms erupted with chaotic Dominion chatter. Confusion, shock, fear. They had been wounded in a way they had never thought possible. Hale turned to Vance, her voice low. "We just started a war." Vance didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone on that bridge knew the truth. The Dominion wouldn't retreat. They would bring everything they had. They would come for Earth, for humanity, for every ally that humans had. And yet, for the first time, the silence of the galaxy had been broken. The reign of the Dominion had been challenged, and humanity had drawn first blood. The Sol Invictus turned away from the battlefield, engines burning bright. The crew didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere, deep inside, Captain Elias Vance felt a grim certainty, the kind of certainty that changes the course of history. Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to break the galaxy's reign forever. Asterisk. The explosion of the Dominion flagship spread across the galaxy like a shockwave, not in space, but in whispers. On distant mining colonies, workers spoke quietly in break rooms, glancing over their shoulders. On worlds where the Dominion's banners had flown for centuries, shopkeepers passed the news in murmurs. The story was always the same. A human ship destroyed a Dominion flagship at first. Many didn't believe it. The Dominion's fleets were untouchable. They ruled through fear, and no one dared strike them directly. But the reports kept coming, and with each retelling, the truth grew stronger. The High Dominion was not invincible. Far from Earth, in the massive command chamber of the Dominion's High Fleet, Grand Admiral Thalarus stood before a projection of the destroyed flagship. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with cold fury. "This was not a battle," he said to the assembled admirals. "This was an insult, a challenge to our rule, and an insult unanswered is weakness. We will answer." No one in that room dared to question him. Orders spread across the Dominion's territory. Gather the armada. Every available warship, every carrier, every destroyer was to assemble at the edge of human space. Back aboard the Sol Invictus, Captain Elias Vance studied the reports from intelligence channels. More than 100 Dominion ships were already massing. Soon there would be more. Commander Aria Hale leaned over the holographic map. "They'll hit the Gateway Rift first," she said. "It's the only stable jump point into human space big enough for a fleet that size. If they control it, they can strike any world they want." Vance nodded. "Then we make sure they never control it." The Sol Invictus jumped to a secure location deep within human space. There, a fleet was waiting, small by Dominion standards, but deadly in its own way. 40 ships in total. Each carried advanced railguns, stealth systems, and missiles the Dominion had never faced before. Some were crewed by humans, others by volunteers from alien worlds the Dominion had conquered long ago. Many of these allies had never dared to fight back. But now, with the Dominion wounded, they were ready to try. One such ally was Captain Loran Kale, a reptilian officer from the planet Zaya. His people had been enslaved for 300 years, their culture erased, their history banned. On the Stormfang, his scaled hands gripped the controls as he spoke to Vance over the comms. "You struck the first blow, human. Now, let us help you finish this war." Preparations for the coming battle began immediately. Mines were placed throughout the rift. Automated drones were stationed in hidden pockets of space. Scout ships slipped between asteroid fields, mapping every possible Dominion entry point. But as the human fleet readied itself, the Dominion armada grew larger. Intelligence scouts sent back chilling images, massive carriers bristling with fighter wings. Battleships armed with planetary siege cannons, cruisers built to smash entire fleets in a single pass. In the command room of the Sol Invictus, Vance stood with his officers. The Dominion believes numbers win wars. They're wrong. We win by making them bleed for every kilometer they take. Hale crossed her arms. If they take any at all. The tension was a living thing, pressing on every soldier, every officer, every crew member. They knew the odds. They knew the Dominion had never been defeated in open battle. But they also knew something else. The galaxy was watching. If humanity won here, rebellions would erupt across Dominion space. If they lost, humanity would be wiped from history as the hours passed. Long-range sensors picked up the first wave of the Dominion fleet entering the rift. "They're here," Hale said quietly. Vance took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Then we hold the line." In the silence that followed, the fleet moved into position. Railguns charged. Missile silos opened. Cloaked drones drifted toward their targets. The storm was coming, and humanity stood ready to face it. The Gateway Rift was no ordinary stretch of space. It was a vast tear in the fabric of reality, a swirling corridor of unstable energy that connected human space to the Dominion's heartland. For centuries, it had been nothing more than a guarded checkpoint, a place where the Dominion decided who passed and who vanished into nothing. Now, for the first time, the rift was a battleground. Captain Elias Vance stood at the command table aboard the Sol Invictus, watching the tactical display. Come alive! The Dominion fleet was entering the rift in perfect formation, row after row of massive ships advancing like a steel wall. Their bright golden banners shimmered against the darkness, a show of arrogance and power. The human fleet was already in position, 40 ships hidden among the rift's fractured space. Cloaked drones drifted like ghosts between asteroid fragments. Mines floated silently in the shadows, waiting to ignite. Commander Arya Hale glanced at the display. They're sending their destroyers first, clearing the path for their big guns. Vance gave a short nod. Let them come. The first Dominion destroyer crossed the hidden minefield. A flash of light tore it in half. The second ship slowed, scanning for threats. But too late, a railgun round from the stealth frigate Shadowlance punched through its shields, ripping it apart. The Dominion responded instantly. Fighters spilled out from their carriers, swarming like angry insects. Plasma fire lit the rift in blue and green flares. The human fleet answered with precision. Missiles launched from hidden positions, drones diving into enemy formations before detonating. From the bridge of the Sol Invictus, Vance watched the chaos unfold. The rift echoed with explosions, debris, spinning into the void. The Dominion's perfect formation began to break apart. Target their lead carrier, Vance ordered. The Sol Invictus railgun fired. The shot cut through the carrier's shields and slammed into its hangar bay, igniting fuel reserves. The explosion was so massive that 3 nearby Dominion fighters vanished instantly, but the Dominion was far from beaten. Their heavy cruisers pushed forward, shields glowing under relentless fire. A massive battleship emerged from the rift's distortion, the vanguard of glory. A warship so large it could block out a moon. Vanguard is locking weapons, Hale warned. Vance's voice stayed calm. Bring us around. Target their reactor. Core, the Sol Invictus dove into the battle, weaving between enemy fire. Plasma blasts grazed the hull, making the deck shudder. The ship's railguns and missile bays unleashed a storm of fire at the vanguard of glory. It wasn't enough. The Dominion battleships returned fire, hammered the Sol Invictus, tearing through its shields and punching a hole in the outer armor. Sparks rained down on the bridge. Smoke filled the air. Damage to portside reactors. A crewman shouted, "Keep firing," Vance barked. The fleet rallied around their flagship. The Stormfang unleashed a barrage of torpedoes, while the human corvette Peregrine darted in close, planting explosive charges along the Vanguard's hull with a deafening roar that could be felt even in the silence of space. The Dominion battleships. Reactor went critical. A white-hot explosion swallowed it whole, sending shock waves through the rift. For a heartbeat, the Dominion's advance faltered. Ships turned, formations broke, and then, as if a single order reached them all at once, they began to retreat. The human fleet didn't chase. They had achieved what no one thought possible. They had stopped the Dominion at the Gateway Rift. On the bridge of the Sol, Invictus exhaled slowly. We held the line. Vance didn't smile. He knew this was only a battle, not the war. The Dominion would return, stronger, angrier, and more desperate. But the galaxy had seen what humanity could do, and now, nothing would be the same. Asterisk, the victory at the Gateway Rift echoed across the galaxy. On worlds long chained under Dominion rule, people whispered about rebellion, the story of a small human fleet stopping the Empire's armada spread faster than the Dominion could censor it. But in the capital halls of the High Dominion, the mood was different. There was no denial, no excuses, only rage. High Chancellor Varys stood before the council, her voice cutting like a blade. They have shamed us. They have weakened the order of the galaxy. Humanity has shown every slave world that the Dominion can bleed. We will remind them, all of them, why we are feared. From the shadows of the chamber, the Dominion's deadliest weapon was brought forward. The World Breaker. It was not a warship in the usual sense. It was a moving nightmare, a siege vessel the size of a small moon, built to destroy entire planets in a single strike. It carried an energy core capable of splitting a world apart from orbit, leaving nothing but burning rock. In the Empire's long history, the World Breaker had been used only 3 times, each time to erase a civilization. Its next target was Earth. On the Sol Invictus, Captain Elias Vance received the intelligence report. The briefing room was silent as the projection of the World Breaker hovered above the table. The ship looked impossibly huge, its black armor etched with glowing runes of power. Commander Arya Hale spoke first. "If that thing reaches Earth, it's over. No defenses we have can stop a full planetary core strike." Vance's gaze didn't move from the image. "Then we stop it before it gets anywhere." Near Earth, the mission was suicidal, and they all knew it. The World Breaker would be heavily guarded, traveling deep inside Dominion territory. Any attack would mean facing not just one monster, but an entire wall of enemy ships. Still, the order went out. The Sol Invictus, the Stormfang, and a handful of the fastest human and allied ships would attempt the interception. Their plan was simple: get close enough to the World Breaker to hit its reactor core. 2 days later, deep in the dark reaches of space, the human strike group emerged from FTL. There it was, the World Breaker. Even from a distance, it filled the viewport. Its surface bristled with weapons larger than entire corvettes. 4 massive escort fleets surrounded it, forming a near-impenetrable shield. "They're scanning us," Hale reported. Vance's jaw tightened. "Then let's give them something to look at." The fleet surged forward, firing all weapons. missiles streaked through the void, railgun slugs slammed into shields, and explosions flared like suns. The Dominion's escorts responded instantly, unleashing a torrent of plasma fire. The Stormfang took the lead, weaving between enemy cruisers and unleashing a barrage of torpedoes. The smaller corvette Falcon's Claw dove beneath the Worldbreaker's massive frame, dodging beams of pure energy that carved holes in space itself. On the Sol Invictus, the deck shook under heavy fire. Damage reports filled the comms, but Vance ignored them, his eyes locked on the target. They were close now, close enough for the reactor strike. Target locked, Hale called out, "Fire!" The Sol Invictus railgun fired 3 times. In quick succession, the rounds slammed into the Worldbreaker's shielding, tearing cracks into its armor. The Stormfang followed with a spread of antimatter warheads, detonating in a blinding flash. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Worldbreaker's core began to overload. Alarms blared across the Dominion fleet. Their escorts scattered, but it was too late. The explosion ripped outward in a sphere of burning light, swallowing everything within 1,000 kilometers. When the glare faded, nothing of the Worldbreaker remained but drifting shards of molten metal. Cheers erupted across the human fleet, but on the bridge of the Sol Invictus, Vance remained silent. He knew the Dominion would see this not just as defeat, but as humiliation. They would not stop. Hale stood beside him. "We just saved Earth." Vance nodded slowly. For now, the war wasn't over. But in that moment, the galaxy had changed again. The Dominion's reign had cracked even further, and the final blow was coming. The destruction of the Worldbreaker shook the galaxy to its core. On Dominion-controlled worlds, people no longer whispered, they shouted in the streets. Flags of rebellion were raised in open defiance. Planetary governors received messages they had not seen in generations. Your rule is over. For the High Dominion, the humiliation was unbearable. Their greatest fleets had been beaten. Their ultimate weapon had been destroyed. The council chambers, once filled with pride, now echoed with anger and fear. Grand Admiral Thaleris stood before the last gathering of the Dominion's War Council. His voice was as cold as the void. This is no longer a war of control. This is a war for survival. If humanity reaches our homeworld, the Dominion ends. But far from the capital, humanity was already preparing to do exactly that. On the Sol Invictus, Captain Elias Vance listened as reports poured in from Allied fleets. Dozens of former slave worlds had joined the fight. Shipyards hidden in asteroid belts worked day and night to repair damaged vessels and build new ones. The human fleet had grown from 40 ships to more than 200. Commander Aria Hale stood beside him, a rare smile on her face. For the first time in history, the galaxy is fighting on the same side. Their target was clear: Varus Prime, the Dominion capital. The operation was codenamed Final Dawn. The plan was simple in words, but deadly in execution. Punch through the Dominion's last defense line, destroy their fleet, and land strike. Teams to capture the High Council. The fleet jumped into the Varus system and was met with a wall of fire. The Dominion had gathered everything they had left, nearly 300 ships. The space above the capital world became a storm of plasma, missiles, and railgun slugs. The Sol Invictus led the charge, shields flaring under heavy impacts. The Stormfang darted through enemy lines, unleashing torpedoes that tore holes in the Dominion's formation. Allied cruisers from Zaya, demos, and values fought side by side with human destroyers, each ship adding to the chaos. Above the capital, massive defense platforms turned their guns on the invaders. One blast from a planetary cannon split a human cruiser in half, but the fleet pressed on. "Target their command carrier," Vance ordered. The sole Invictus railgun fired, the shot slicing through the carrier's bridge. Without command, the Dominion's formations began to crumble, while the space battle raged. Dropships filled with strike teams descended through the burning skies of Varys Prime in the capital city. Soldiers fought street by street against the Dominion Guard. The once proud spires of the city now burned, their golden surfaces blackened by smoke. Vance himself led one of the ground teams, storming the High Council's palace. The marble halls were shattered by gunfire, the walls echoing with the shouts of battle. In the council chamber, High Chancellor Varys stood surrounded by guards. Her voice was still sharp, even as defeat closed in. "You think this victory will last? You think you can rule what we built?" Vance stepped forward, his rifle steady. "We're not here to rule. We're here to make sure no one rules like you again." With that, the last of the Dominion's leadership was taken into custody. Outside, the human flag and the banners of their allies were raised over the ruins of the palace. In the days that followed, the Dominion fleet surrendered. Their worlds declared independence. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy was free from a single, crushing power. But victory came at a cost. Thousands of ships had been lost. Entire cities lay in ruins. Millions had died for this freedom. On the bridge of the Sol Invictus, the crew stood in silence, looking out at the stars. The war was over. Hail broke the quiet. "It's strange. We fought so long for this moment. Now I don't know what comes next." Vance's eyes stayed on the horizon of space. Peace never lasts forever. Somewhere in the dark, someone will rise again, and when they do, humanity will be ready. The Sol Invictus turned toward the distant stars, its engines flaring bright. The reign of the High Dominion was over, but the story of humanity among the stars had only just begun.